Alright, back again, Luke here. And, dun, 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 商品が届きました. So, the goods are here. Finally, I have my new setup, and I figured we could take a look at it. As you can see, the keyboard here, it's a giant monster. And if we pan out, we can see this is my new setup. This is what I was talking about, trying to make more space for. But unfortunately, I didn't take into account that the monitor was going to be this big. This is a giant monitor. What this is an FM Towns 2 system. And this is an FM Towns 2F tower here, as you can see on the side. And this is the matching monitor that goes with it. This is the matching keyboard, the mouse, the control pad, and it has an HDD hard disk drive here located with it. This is something that was an option, but it came with the system. This is my latest get, so I figured we could take a look at the system, talk a little bit about the history behind it, and you know, what the system means, what it's made up of, and just kind of go from there. Basically, if we start down here with the name itself, if you remember taking a look at some of my older videos, or a couple of my, well, maybe not so old videos, but the ones talking about the FM7, the FM8, and the new FM7, talking about the name for the FM coming from or originating from Fujitsu Micro. This is part of the series itself. This is the successor here. And the Towns is it's an interesting story where the Towns came from. The name Towns came from Charles Towns, who was a famous Nobel Prize winner for physics. And back when Fujitsu was making these kind of early computers, they wanted to base it off of people who had won prizes, or they wanted to base it off of kind of famous inventions. That's why they kept choosing all these different names for it. And this name itself is spelled a little bit different than Charles Towns' name. His name is spelled Townes, and this is spelled Towns. Now you might ask yourself, well, what happened to the E? Well, if you think about Japanese itself, the language is usually uses a lot of phonetics that are associated with words that are in the Japanese vocabulary, in the Japanese language. So example for T-O would be to, but with a W on it, it would be like tao. But if this had N-E, in Japanese that's pronounced ne, and then with S by itself, it usually becomes su. So they only have the same pronunciation for the different characters, so even if it's an S, it would usually be a su. And this one with an E would be nesu, so it would be taonesu. And what Fujitsu didn't want is a mispronunciation of the word, so they removed the E, so it would just be pronounced towns. So it goes together like that, and that's why the system name was changed. But it was based on the famous Nobel Prize winner Charles Towns, so kind of cool info about that. Another thing that I really like about this system is it was designed, or it was made in 1989, but if you take a look at the system design, or the tower design, it looks really kind of futuristic. I mean, I've seen towers nowadays that kind of had the same kind of look to it. This has a really, really cool outer look to it. It doesn't look very simple or really boxy. It kind of has this cool, I don't know, like kind of futuristic look to it, like it's part of like some sort of military supply box or something. Really, really nice. Now, this thing was made in 1989. It wound up kind of getting shoved out of the market in 1997, so it only had about an 8-year shelf life. And it was a really good PC, but unfortunately the system itself was competing against things like this guy over here, the PC 8801, and that was pretty much rocking the market. So Fujitsu decided to kind of bail on this one a little bit early. And there was a lot of cool stuff about this thing. If we take a look at the front here, there's two 3.5-inch floppy drives. The one down here is for reading text, and the top one up here is for the system disk. And it has drive 1 and drive 2. In the front here, we have our CD drive, and what's cool about this CD drive is the disk itself. Here is the software disk. This is System Software version 2.1, and when you go to put the disc in, you don't attach it like this to the spindle, you just set it in here. And that was a little bit rough, but on the sides here it has a couple of pieces of rubber so it doesn't move around. And then once you get it fitted in there, you just close it up, and that's it, and it's ready to go. And then when you go to open it, even if the disc was still spinning, what's nice is these two rubber stoppers here, they actually cause the disc to stop and not go flying out. So really inventive for its time. Down at the bottom here, if we take a look, we can see it has a fast, judging by the speed of the disc, how fast it's going. It has the CD drive here, and it also has the HDD option. Now, the HDD is this box here, which is not functioning the best right now. This is something that's quite old, and I think the hard drive inside it's ready to clunk out, but it kind of makes a bit of noise. But this was a really expensive option at the time. Not exactly the most common thing to find with this set, but luckily it was part of the set, so I'm really happy with that. Also has a digital kind of meter down here for the volume. When we press the volume up, it goes from red to yellow to green, or yeah, something like that. It's either that or backwards. And it almost acts as like a peak meter. It's really kind of cool. Has the keyboard adapter down here. It has a mic jack, and you might be asking yourself, why does it have a mic jack? Well, if you have seen some of the other videos where I've put up videos on my, what is it, my... Oh, I'm trying to think how many different systems. The Pioneer Laser Active, that's one that I can remember, had a karaoke deck on it that was an adapter for it. You just plugged it in and you could do some singing. Other machines that are really common for karaoke, they used to have the Dreamcast, had a karaoke expansion for it. And I think even the original Famicom had a karaoke feature for it. Back in the day, a lot of singing or karaoke features were intertwined in just about everything in Japan here, so that's another kind of cool feature that this thing has, although it's not going to be used. It has a headphone jack down here. It also has two slots, one for the pad and one for the mouse. And it's got a cool little dust protector here, a little dust flap, so that's kind of nice as well. It keeps the dust out when you're not using it, so you just plug that in and use some of that. So that's all set up there. One interesting thing about this disk drive is that it not only played just regular software, for example, like the CDs for the system disk, it also played music CDs, but what was really cool about it is it had a really good mix of parts on the inside that made the sound just fantastic. It sounded really good. The thing has 8 PCM voices that are available with 6 channels of FM sound, and that was both provided by the Ricoh, the RF5C68, and the Yamaha 26012, and this is a beautiful sounding machine. When you go to turn it on, it sounds really, really nice. All of the sound that comes from this machine comes out of the side here, which you can see there's a little speaker port on the side. There's also a reset button, which will reset the system. And if we take a look at the back of this, what's nice about the top here is it says push here or push here. When you push on it, it's got a nice little handle that's hidden in there, so that pops right out. Try and turn this around just a little bit. If we take a look at the back here, this has 3 expansion bays, and I believe these were for memory expansion, 72-pin expansion ports here. It also has one for the printer. You can see it's got a printer expansion here. It has the analog RGB cable, and what's nice about this RGB cable is it uses the same pinout. It's a DB15, and that's the same pinout that the old Macintosh uses. So technically, I believe you should be able to just plug this into a Mac, an old Mac monitor, and it should be ready to go. So that's another nice thing about it. Down here at the bottom, you can see here's the hard drive adapter or cable for this. Also has some audio outs on the back, and yeah, that's the beast here. So really cool setup. Let's go and try and move this thing around. If we take a look at the monitor, try and swing this around. In the back here, what's nice is you can see that the size here, vertical size, has 2 different sizes. By pressing it in, it will change the size in the front, and then by releasing it, it does the same thing. Really interesting setup here. Really nice and really convenient to change that. So if you want like the wide or the narrow one, or some places, some games or some software needs wide or narrow, that's what that button's for there. In the back here, you can change around. I believe it's the RGB. Let me see here. Maybe it looks like just the monitor convergence on the back there. Yeah, not too much. I thought there was a spot where you could change around the brightness and etc. Oh, there it is. It's up front. That's what I'm looking at. So here you can change around the brightness. You can change around the position. What's nice about this, you change around the position of the image, left and right. You can change the contrast. So, and I think that is probably all about this beast of a monitor. But the monitor itself plugs into the tower, plugs into the back of the tower. So when you hit the power on the tower, yeah, you get a flower. No, I don't know. I figured try and get something to rhyme there, and that just didn't work. So, nonetheless, you have to turn on the tower here. You have to also apply power to the front. But once you turn on the monitor up here and you hit power down here, it will actually start up the system. Some really interesting facts about the system itself is the system had about 179 games that came out for it. Some really good titles, and I think some of you have seen some of my older videos where I had put up ones on Afterburner. This thing had Afterburner 1, 2, and 3, had Indiana Jones on it. It had, what else? It had Splatterhouse that came on it. Some really excellent titles, you know, just to name a few there, but it had some great games that went in on it and were made for it. But this system itself, it kind of fell short. The FM towns could have lasted quite a bit longer, but what Fujitsu decided to do is kind of give up on it, and there were a lot of people going in on making towers and PC stuff at the time, and it started to become a saturated market, so they kind of turned their ideas more towards PC cloning, and they made a lot of stuff that was based on DOS. What was really nice about it is when they started to outsource their games and their software, they made the games self-bootable, just kind of like the ISOs that people make now with the self-boot. They made almost all of the games self-boot, so you didn't have to use any sort of additional boot disk to slide in here or any side of hard disk to get it to work. It was a self-boot, and the way that they did that is they used a really kind of basic version of Towns OS, which is what this thing uses. This thing uses Towns OS. It can use Windows 3.0, 3.1, or Windows 95B. But they gave the developers the opportunity to use a really bare bones kind of version of Towns OS. And what that did is it just had an execute file on it, and when you pop that in there and turn it on, it would just fire right up. It didn't have to go through any sort of check or anything like that. So that was kind of nice. A nice little addition to it. Another cool thing is this is one of the first PCs, you know, keep in mind this was made in 1989, one of the first PCs that had a boot from CD OS, and that was designed with Windows 95 and with the Towns OS. So if you have used kind of, what is it, Linux, like Ubuntu or Ubuntu, where you can just boot it from CD, you don't have to install the operating system, you can just pop it in and use it from the CD, and then if you like it, you can install it. This thing had very much the same similar thing, but it was out like 7 years earlier than Windows 95B, and yeah, just an amazing bit of technology for its time. So what we can do here is just turn it on and I'll let you guys take a look at it. It does have the OS CD in there right now, so should be alright. We'll hit the power on this, and you'll notice that nothing's coming on here right now, and that is because all of the power is into the system. So once we hit the power on this, you can see the peak meter go down there for the sound. This thing doesn't take very long to warm up. It actually takes a very short time, and then it's ready to go. Try and turn this off a little bit. You can see the Towns OS, and I believe this thing is trying to read. Yep, it's trying to read from the old CD, and there you can see it's kind of bright, but it says Towns OS, and then it flips over. That's one thing that it'll do with the monitor. So depending on what kind of what kind of game or what kind of software is in there, it will automatically change the system and change the monitor. So just like the Sharp 20 or Sharp X68000. But really cool. You can see it's got everything on here. It's got all the system information. You can play with the discs down here. It's got, I think it even has some really small games in it, like what is it, the Minesweeper kind of stuff. So really cool to take a look at some of the different options that are in here. But yeah, this is the way the system is right now. I have a couple of games that I'm going to try and put up some videos on to show you guys a little bit, but the picture itself is just crystal clear. This is a beautiful monitor, and really happy about that. But just want to share with you guys a little bit of a look at the latest pickup, and that is the Fujitsu FM Towns 2, the tower setup with the monitor and the whole deal, the whole package. But we will definitely be putting up some video on some games here. And actually, you know what we'll do? Let's try this. Let's turn this thing off. And you can hear it shut off there. Let's try this. We'll take this one out. And I'll put in a game that we've put in before. Let's see here. Which is, let's try this one. Good old Afterburner, made for the FM Towns. So, let's pop this in and listen to some of that. That thing looks like it's got a little bit of dust on it, so. There we go. All right. And you guys can hear the sound that comes out of this small speaker on the side. It's just pretty amazing. So let's hit the power again. See the peak meter. Turn this thing on. It takes a couple of seconds for it to boot up, but then it'll automatically jump again. It'll change the screen resolution. You can see that it's checking down here. This is the really basic version of FM Towns, the OS, that makes this a bootable from disk game. And there it goes. It switches into the different resolution here. For the monitor, you can see down here it's working, or it's reading. And here is our intro. And let's hit the start button here and give it a listen. Just like I said, a beautiful, beautiful setup. So let's see. Now, this does get quite loud, so you can see the peak meter there. It's kind of awesome. That's not even all the way up, so. And it should start here in just a second, which will be kind of cool, and you guys will get a chance. Probably have to turn it down, actually. But amazing sound from the system. Some of the best music I've heard, you know, on both of these systems, on this one and my other FM2s, just because of that Yamaha chip and that Ricoh chip. So, yeah, nonetheless, just want to show you guys a little bit of this system in action. And it does have some very, very loud sound to it. It's really a fantastic, beautiful picture here. Let's see. Try and turn this down a bit. But it's a beautiful picture, great sound, and a fantastic system. So I'll make sure to put up some gameplay videos on this in just a bit and show you guys this thing in action with some different games in it. But yeah, that's about all for me for right now. Like always, I'll put up another video here soon. So thanks for watching.